Welcome to Let's Go. We help the leaders of entrepreneurial companies take their companies to the next level. Talent is on the minds of CEOs everywhere. No matter what your source, Vistage, YPO, Deloitte & Touche, Ernst & Young, whatever it is, it's all about talent, access to talent, attracting and retaining great talent. So who better to talk to today about talent than Chris Allen? Chris is a thought leader in the areas of culture and people development. He's a founder of Always About People, because it is always about people. He's previously was chief people officer at Movement Mortgage, where he saw growth explode from 1,600 to 4,000 people. And he's got 20 years of experience in rapidly growing organizations. Simply, Chris builds culture and develops leaders. Over the last couple of years, Chris has been building Always About People, working with entrepreneurs all over the country. Chris, man, thank you so much for joining me today.
Kurt, it's so good to be here. Obviously, it's been really fun to get to know you over the past couple of years as well. Some of the partnerships that you have around the country are fascinating. It puts you in front of entrepreneurs all the time. And I mean, let's go. Let's address this topic. I'm ready.
Chris, we're going to have to cut that out. That's my line. Let's go is my line. Hey, man, it's been fun to get to know you as well. So thanks for joining me. We hear about this term, Great Resignation. Candidly, I'm kind of tired of using the words Great Resignation. But what is your perspective on what's going on in the marketplace today when it comes to talent?
Yeah, well, I actually appreciate the fact that you said you're sick of it, because I am too. I honestly think that the phrase itself is sort of just a cheap way to throw around the issues that we're seeing. And it's almost, it gives leaders and organizations the ability to rationalize what's happening. Here's my perspective on it. When you look at the actual data from the US Bureau of Labor and Statistics, they refer to this as the quit rate. And when you go back 20 years and look at the quit rate, I want to make sure that I separate those, articulate it. But we obviously saw a dip in the quit rate after 2008, 2009 recession. But that rate has been steadily increasing since. And we saw a dip at the beginning of the pandemic over the past couple of years. And now what everybody is referring to as this Great Resignation is simply the incline of that data over the past, call it 12 months. However, when you look at the graph, we are actually in line with where the quit rate would have been pre-pandemic, pandemic or not. And so I don't want to say there's not a problem. We have a problem. But I think when we phrase it like the Great Resignation, it sort of just passes the blame to all these next gens who are flight risk and they have no loyalty and, like they're entitled and whatever other labels we want to put on people, right, instead of saying, what's the deeper issue? So what I would love to talk about is there is a deeper issue in the workplace today that is creating a higher quit rate. Why is that? And I know obviously we want to have a conversation here, but let's dive into what is really going on in the workplace that has changed really over the last 12, 15 years, because what's happened now is that even the Gallup organization identified in, I believe it was 2017, so let's call it 5 years ago, that more than 50% of people are sitting at their desks looking for another job. So this is nothing new. That's my high level perspective. I don't know what you're seeing, Kurt.
It's funny. I just read an article today. I think it was Inc. It might've been Forbes that said that the Great Resignation was bullshit. It was based on limited data. It's based on the U.S. Federal Bureau of Statistics or whatever that you said. Yep. And that it has exactly what you just described, that it's not as out of line as we want to think, but it makes a great headline. Having said that, there are people who have come out of the pandemic and into 21 who are realizing that they want a more inspired workplace and they want to do something more with their life than sit at their desk doing what they were doing previously. And I think the pandemic taught them that life was short. It taught them that perhaps there are other opportunities out there in a virtual or hybrid work environment. And so we're seeing that people are voting with their feet, as my friend Craig Wiley said during the pandemic. But people are now being more active about seeking out new opportunities. So it has made a challenge for entrepreneurial companies as they look to acquire talent and retain talent.
Yeah. So I think that's huge. That like, listen, I don't want to deny the fact that there's an issue. Like there are people leaving organizations. The real question is, why are they leaving? And what can we do to improve this? So for the entrepreneurs who are experiencing this, we work with companies around the country, and it's kind of like, hey, come help me. And so what I would like to go back to just for this show is the McKinsey and Company did a study released at the end of September of 2021. So this is very recent data. In the study, they interviewed hundreds of employees and then actually it was thousands. I think it was 5,700 employees, offset that with a series of interviews of managers. And the question that they were asking was, what does an employee most want? What does an employee believe is most important? And they were sort of contrasting that with, what does a manager think, or what does an organization think matters to the employee? And there was this really cool chart in the study. It's available publicly, but what they basically came up with was that the most surprising thing to McKinsey is that an employee, what they consider most important is that they're valued by their organization, valued by their manager, and feel a sense of belonging in their organization. And all the other things that employers or managers thought were most important, they fell below. It's not that they weren't important, they just weren't most. So this McKinsey study reveals that people really want to feel valued and belong. And I think when we talk about organizations, what we need to be having a conversation about is, are we making people feel valuable? And are we helping them to feel like they belong to something? And that's the most important, because you can keep increasing compensation. You can put all kinds of perks and benefits in place. You can do all kinds of, side programs. You can even put development programs in place. But if people don't feel valued and they don't feel like they belong, they're leaving. And I don't know, Kurt, are you seeing that? Does that ring true with any of the anecdotes that you have?
It does. I like the way you said it, that they're different than what we think they might be as employers. When I hear the word valued, I want to feel, see touchy-feely type things that I really appreciate you and value. Part of the way you do that is through compensation. So people out there don't think that it doesn't mean that compensation and benefits and perks and things aren't important. It just means that they want the types of perks and benefits and compensation that are important to them. And so Chris may like an extra day of vacation, and Kurt likes a little extra, bonus at the end of the month.
Okay. So what's interesting about that is, how are we going to find out what's important to each employee? And
Ask.
It's really that simple. It's like, we could ask, and then probably the most important part of asking is that you would actually listen. And so I think what we're seeing in the marketplace is a lot of employees saying, if you really cared about me, if you valued me, you would take the time to come to me, even in a virtual world, and ask me what's most important. You would not just ask, but you would listen. And part of the whole process of asking and listening is that you would actually take the time to reach out to me. And it's amazing how many organizations don't do the simple thing like a regular one-on-one with employees, which more so than compensation or any other perks and benefits, most people are saying, hey, would you just show me that I matter by giving me time, asking me for my opinion, and listening to me? And you would think, gosh, that's so simple, but it's not.
Yep.
So I think we're seeing that across organizations. And what I would say is that it seems to be highlighting a mid-level management issue. And that's what I'm seeing right now. And obviously that might not perfectly apply to the entrepreneurial world, except for this thought. And then I'd love to get your thoughts on it. We're really great about taking individual contributors. In an entrepreneurial world, it's the sales guy. It's the administratively minded person who can do a lot of things. And then because they've been with the organization since the beginning, we're going to promote them into a leadership or management role without actually helping them understand what's needed to be a manager. That's the problem. Kurt, I'd love your thoughts on this. I mean, you were shaking your head, but You must have some opinion.
And we've seen so many entrepreneurial companies reward the individual contributors and legacy employees with management positions, and oftentimes ends in disaster. Not always, but oftentimes does. If we provide them with training and development, it helps a lot. But if we set them out there to sink or swim, more often than not, they sink.
And I think what you see then is not only does that manager sink, but they take their entire team with them down. And the way to recognize it is that if you've promoted somebody into a management role and you're seeing attrition on his or her team, dig deeper into, is that attrition due to people not feeling valued or not feeling like a sense of belonging in that group? And I would say that one of the characteristics that I find of newer leaders, managers, is that they don't see the importance in some of that because they're individual contributors. They were great salespeople. They were great administrative folks. And they just want people, just do your job. Why do I have to do all this valuing stuff? Why can't you just go do your job? And then you have the employee saying, I know how to do the job, but I'd like it if you would just take the time to value me, make me feel like I'm a part of something. So again, we're high level here, Kurt, but those are some of the things that I'm seeing out of the Great Resignation.
So Chris, all super interesting stuff. What are we going to do about it?
That's a great question. Well, we've kind of already talked about the importance of mid-level management, and we can go deeper into that, or development of mid-level management. The second part is, how do we practically help people feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, like they belong to something? And there's a bunch of really cool research out there about how to create community within organizations or teams, and some really highly practical thoughts for the listeners. Number one, people need to know when they become part of a community. So there needs to be some sort of initiation or onboarding that's really done intentionally and with excellence. And I think when organizations take the onboarding experience seriously, they help people feel like they're a part of something. So what are you giving people? What do you have prepared for them in advance? How seriously are you taking that first day? Are you just welcoming them and then sending them off to their desk, not really knowing what the organization's all about? And so I would say a real practical, well thought through onboarding experience that includes the history of the company, some stories of customers, the obviously reinforcing mission, vision, and values. What sort of swag are you providing for them so that they can wear the brand? How else are we going to help them? Who are we going to introduce them to? What other stories are we going to share with them? That would be the onboarding experience. Another one would be the importance of stories in an organization. And I think we don't do a great job collectively of sharing stories with people. And so the more stories that can be shared, that's what families do. And communities all have stories that they share. Third one, while I'm thinking about it, would be traditions. I think every organization or community has traditions or rituals. And we might have a listener kind of thinking, I don't have any. Well, guess what? You get to create them. And you don't have to create them by yourself. There's probably somebody in the organization who's really passionate about this. And it can be everything from, let's make Halloween a big deal. Let's make the holiday party a big deal. Let's do an anniversary every year that becomes a big deal. For birthdays, let's do something special. Let's have some traditions around Friday morning meetings or team meetings or whatever. It doesn't matter. But those rituals and traditions tend to bring people together. The last one that I'll say, I'm pretty passionate about, but it's, how do we say goodbye to people? And gracious goodbyes are really important in today's environment. And so when we're thinking about belonging to a community, I need people to know how to come into the community, but I also need them to understand how you leave. And if we help people leave well, and we say good things about them after they leave, and we celebrate them on to whatever's next, people will remember that. And even the people who leave your organization will be out on the outside telling other people, marketing for you, this is a great place to go work. And I think it's fairly short-sighted when we as leaders get frustrated, upset, and then talk poorly about somebody when they leave, because that's doing incredible damage to the community. So I think those are 4 real practical ideas.
I
Thoughts on
love
those?
them. I've got a couple comments on a few of them on leaving. It always bothered me when I was with bigger firms and we'd have happy hours when someone would leave, but we didn't have happy hours when someone would arrive. So I can appreciate the both the hello and goodbye. On the
Yeah.
traditions, I wanted to point out one that we have, and they can be silly. You mentioned a few, but we have a silly one. It's called the Slinky Award.
Perfect.
And you get the Slinky Award. And the reason it's the Slinky Award is because he was loyal. He had a positive attitude. He was flexible. He believed in teamwork and leadership. And so we have a Slinky Award that we give away every quarter. And I was fortunate enough to win a Slinky Award a while back. But
That's right. No, I mean, like, people look forward to that stuff. And the example that I'll give is, I actually have some screenshots of social media posts. But when in my time at Movement Mortgage, Halloween was a big issue, not an issue, a big deal. And people would get dressed up. Teams would decorate their like office environments. Teams would dress up in themes. And one team that I was a part of, it was a training team underneath me, all dressed up like Top Gun. And they had everything themed out. And I have a social media post to prove this, but one of the females on the team was out on PTO for her wedding and came in dressed up to participate in the Top Gun theme, even though she was on PTO. Now, we're not trying to reinforce working while on PTO, but the tradition drew her in. And that's what we're talking about when we think of, like, how do we create a culture or a community where people feel like they belong? So a couple practical thoughts.
love it. Hey, you mentioned to me a while back, we hear about recruiting and retention. And you told me one point, it might have been in passing, but you said, Kurt, it's really not about retention, because it comes to mind like a prison cell. I want to attract. So it's more recruiting and attracting. Can you touch on that for a minute? I thought it was very profound.
In order to build a culture that is aligned, you want to attract the right people who are aligned. I think one of the mistakes is that we're not bold enough about the community we're trying to build. And so if anybody's trying to build a community, they want to attract people who want to be a part of the community. So if we're really bold about who we want to be, we're attracting the right people who kind of already know, because any candidate is going to spend time on your website. They're going to spend time on executive profiles on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it. They're going to go look at Glassdoor reviews, Google reviews, everything else, and they're going to have a pretty good idea of what they're joining. So be bold, because the people who look at that and go, gosh, there's no way I'd ever want to be a part of that. Great, because you don't want them either. So while you're attracting some, you're also repelling other people, and that's a healthy thing. So you're now attracting the people that want to be a part of that culture, repelling people who don't. And again, the part of attraction is like, once I attract them, how do I remain attractive? Because when we talk about retention, it's like, well, it's the responsibility of the employee to want to stay. And I would say, I would flip that. I think it's the responsibility of the employer to continue attracting people to want to stay. And that circles back all the way to creating a place where they feel valued and that they belong. So
I love it. That's a great, if you take away anything from this podcast today, let's talk about attraction versus retention. And repelling is not a bad idea, such a bad idea. You get to know quickly, right?
yeah, absolutely. They're going to leave anyway. Like if they were duped into joining, they're not going to stay. And so you might as well be bold from the beginning. Here's who we are. Here's who we want to be. Even if it's aspirational, come and be a part of this community. And you'll attract at least people who are attracted to that.
I love it. You know, we work with entrepreneurial companies all across the country, and some companies aren't very attractive to work for. So that employer brand is so important. So Chris, if I'm just getting started on my journey and I don't really have a great brand to attract great talent to, you've mentioned a few things, but is there one or two things that I should make sure that I do as a foundation to begin my journey have a strong employer brand, to build a great culture.
Yeah, that's good. I think some people answer that question because they don't think the work they do is sexy. And so it's almost like, well, we do manufacturing, that's never going to attract anybody. That's not true at all. Because when you look at the skills, abilities, knowledge, and talents of people in general, all of us are attracted and motivated by different things. And so, regardless of what thing you're doing, what your product is, what your widget is, what service you provide, you have something that will attract people. The key is, what are you doing to get it in front of people's eyeballs? And I think in the historical, maybe world of recruiting, it was like, let's just put up our website. Let's make it at least decent enough. And then we'll hire HireBetter to go find us talent. But the issue is now we're in a world of recruitment marketing where all of these passive candidates are looking for roles and opportunities, and they're looking for attractive companies. They're looking for cultures that will value them and give them a sense of belonging. And so one place to just start practically would be ensure that you have an employer brand that is out in the marketplace. Make sure that on LinkedIn, you've got at least active executives, that your teammates have linked themselves to the actual company brand, the organizational brand. On Indeed, make sure that you have an employer brand on Indeed and that you're linking these jobs back to the employer brand. The website, make sure you have a careers page where people can actually go and look at like pictures of actual people who work there. Enough with iStock photo. Let me see who actually works there. What does the office environment look like? Give me an easy way to engage with the community. On other platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, do you have a YouTube channel? Video content is really important today. And so again, I've probably given a number of ways to improve the branding right now. Then maybe you want to look at hiring on some type of marketing or branding company. Maybe you have somebody internally, but look at the logo design. Are we attracting people with our design, our look, our feel, our colors? It's all really important. I know I've just sort of given a bunch there, Kurt, but do you want to respond to any of those individually?
So when we think of logo, we're not just thinking about attracting clients or customers. We're also talking about attracting our candidates, our team. I like the way you put that. I think a lot of it is really, what do you stand for as an organization? What is your purpose? And as you said, manufacturing firms might consider themselves not sexy, but there are ways that you do things. There's people that you serve. There's how you interact with your stakeholders that is purposeful. And the question is uncovering that and bringing it to light so your team does feel more purposeful in their work.
Yeah, Kurt, that triggered one quick thought. Volvo, the automobile manufacturer, I don't know if it's current right now, but at least historically, the purpose that they stated was they went about what they did to make sure that no human being died in a vehicle next year. That's a purpose. So regardless of what role I have at Volvo, I might be on the line, I might be an engineer, I might be a designer. It doesn't matter. The reason I do what I do every day, whether I think it's boring or not, is to save lives. And so I think you just triggered this kind of last thought, and that would be for any of these organizations, make sure you have clarity around that purpose, around the why, and then ensure that each person and their role understand how what they do every day ties back to the purpose. And that would be something very simple to continue building out that recruitment brand. Because if I can communicate out externally, here's what I do every day. I manufacture something, but that's not really why I do it. I'm doing it to save lives. That's a totally different purpose.
Absolutely. And I can get behind that. It makes me feel special. It makes me feel part of a bigger organization. And you can see how this works, folks, if you expand that purpose to your organization, to your team, and they understand what they're there for. Yeah. Hey, Chris, is there anything else you'd like to add in closing today?
I don't know if you should give me that sort of freedom. No, I would just say this. Obviously, my passion is people. always about people because it is always about people. And I would just say to the entrepreneurs, to the leaders who are watching, regardless of where technology takes this, where AI takes this, where outsourcing takes this, you will still have people involved. And if you can continue to build organizations that value people and give them a sense of belonging and purpose, you will continue to attract talent, regardless of what the statistics say, regardless of the Great Resignation, regardless of the quit rate. If you can find a way for your team, your managers, your mid-level managers, your leaders to create environments where people are valued, where they can become the most that they can be, you will always attract people and you will always have the talent you need. And that would be my last final statement. I'll put a stamp on it with an exclamation point. I'm done.
I love it. Chris, it's always about people, so you need to hire better. You see what I did there?
That's awesome. That was good.
Chris, thanks so much for joining me today. You're doing an amazing job. Keep up the great work. For all of you out there, thanks for joining us today. Our mission at HireBetter is we impact lives by connecting and empowering good people to build great companies. And we hope that this Let's Go series is helping you do just that. So until next time, let's go.
Let's go.